Hi, my name is Alexandra Allred, and I am an adjunct professor at Tarleton State University. And I've got two very exciting guests today for my students and really anyone interested in the health and wellness industry and maybe how to get started as an entrepreneur. So I'm just going to jump in and let's start with Nigel Branson. And please, if you don't mind, Nigel, introduce yourself and just quickly go into, and it's a really great story, but how it is that you got into the health and wellness industry.
Thank you for having me on, Alexandra. I have a very unique story. I worked for BMW South Africa for 6 years, and then I came to America in 1986 and worked for BMW in Dallas for 3 years. And I met a man by the name of Lee Kazi, and Lee's claim to fame, he was the man that invented the world's first diet milkshake back in the early 1970s. And he had a company go from 1 million to 300 million in 3 years, which in today's money value is a company going from 1 million to 1.2 billion in 3 years. So when you're thinking about the timing of a product coming into the market, sometimes there's a little bit of luck with that. And he was definitely fortunate in that arena. But he came to me and he said to me, how would you like to become a millionaire by the time you were 30? Well, I was 26. So if someone said that to you and you knew of their success, what would you say? Absolutely. Next question. What are we going to be doing? He says, you're getting into the wellness business. And I have discovered a product that no one in the health and wellness industry has paid attention to, and that is the world's first inner body and colon cleanse. I said, what is that? He goes, in order for a person to achieve optimal health and wellness, the body has to be able to absorb the nutrients from the food that you eat. And the only way to do that is to cleanse the inner body and large intestine, which is the small intestine. And so back in 1989, we started this company called First Fitness Nutrition with a product that was not fashionable. No one knew what cleansing and detoxification was. And fast forward 35 years now, we've been in business. That product is our number one selling product, number one reordered product. And now the entire world has become familiar with something called gut health. And gut health is this big umbrella, and cleansing and detoxification and digestive health falls under that umbrella. And we were pioneers in that. Anyway, so I got involved in the company in 1989. And in my fourth year, I made more money in 1 year than I did 9 years at BMW. So am I a believer in the health and wellness business? You better believe it.
It's incredible. And as you're talking, I was thinking, I have a lot of students today who say, well, it was a lot easier to go into business back then, but now there's so much competition, it's so much harder. And before you answer, my original question was going to be, what kind of roadblocks did you face when you were first starting? So I'm wondering if the two of those questions kind of go run together for you.
Well, they do, because when you're pioneering anything, you're breaking ground in a territory that most people are not familiar with. So first of all, when you think about cleanse, detox, people think automatically, well, I'm going to be on the move. It's an uncomfortable subject. No one really understood why are you talking about elimination, inner body cleansing. So it was kind of a taboo subject, but that has now become mainstream America. Everyone knows you better cleanse and detox, and it falls under this umbrella called gut health. But to your point, it was much harder when we got started to do business because we never had social media. So when you're thinking about any health and wellness business or any business, the first question you got to ask yourself is, how am I going to get customers? How am I going to scale the business? We had to do it through the old school method, which I'm sure your students aren't even familiar with some of it. And that was traditional newspapers. We had to run ads in newspapers. We didn't have mobile phones. So people would respond to a voice recorder. Then you had to call them back, and most of the time they weren't there. So fast forward till 2025, I can make a decision to get into the business now. I've got social media platforms. It's instant information going out on social media and on the internet. And I think it's a lot easier to connect with people. The whole method of social media, if you're using it for business, is to generate leads, to generate interest in what you're doing, to get a product sale, to scale your business. So if I was a young entrepreneur today, I'd be more excited about starting a health and wellness business because the tools that are available are so advanced and the information's quick, much
Oh,
quicker.
that's it. So, how would you say, because you were selling BMWs, has the fitness industry changed you personally by being in doing what you
Well,
do?
one of the things that when I was 26 years old, as most young 20-year-olds, our focus is on trying to build a life for our families. And so the concentration is on making money. And when I first got started, I really didn't care about people to the extent that I've become passionate. It was a money transaction. I want to become a millionaire. I want to make money. I want to have a house. I want to have all these material things. But as you get into the health and wellness business and you see the impact that you can make in changing someone's life physically, and in our case, financially, in some cases too, but people live a life of quiet desperation, and more people are unhealthy than they are healthy. So imagine being able to be in a business where you're actually transforming someone's life, where you're able to help them lose weight, help them to alleviate some medical issues, take them from all these prescriptions that they're on to virtually no prescriptions and living a healthy lifestyle. That's very, very rewarding. My satisfaction comes from seeing people have life change.
Mhm.
So if I can help someone physically or financially, it's a win. And you just become part of people's lives. It's about caring. It's not just a transaction.
Mhm.
It's about making an impact. We want our society today has become so detached because of the disconnect of people. But I'm in a social selling business, and the backside of the social selling is to connect. The backside is the relationship I'm building with people.
So, and I would say to my students, to listeners, to anybody really truly in the health and wellness and fitness industry, I've had the opportunity to both Google and stalk Nigel a little bit, but I've also talked to him a couple times, and I'm here to tell you that the passion that you're hearing from him is 100% who this gentleman is. So it's there's beautiful answers. My next guest, Jay, actually, this is funny because Jay made me, he has a very successful podcast and he interviewed me, I think 3 years ago when my sports book was coming out. So now we're flipping it and I get to ask him the questions. This guy is amazing. You know what? Jay, tell us about your podcast. Tell us about your profession. Tell us about your bodybuilding because it's quite a story. So I'll let you take it.
Well, once again, thanks for having me on the show as well. I say the show because I'm used to saying the word show, but thanks for
Yeah,
having me in your
it's
class.
your show.
I for people that like to find out more about who I am, I tell folks I'm probably the worst kept secret. You Google my name and you'll find my show site. You'll find all of my speaking engagements, my coaching, my keynote speaking, my books. All of that is wrapped around just sort of this highway of identity that aligns itself with who I am and my calling, which is similar to Nigel there, just helping people make an impact in the lives of others in the health and wellness space as well. Bodybuilding is just a component of that, and the talk show is a component of that. So I'm pretty congruent with my messaging and who I am, and that's why when you mentioned about doing an interview for your students, I thought this would be fantastic.
Yeah, and again, you and I have been able to talk a couple times as well. How did you get into the wellness? Because you didn't start, you've always been an athlete and very active, but I don't believe that you actually got into this side of the business for a profession, right? I mean, you started in the financial side.
Well, it's interesting. So my very first entrepreneurial expression, once I realized, hey, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, like I understand a lot of your students have entrepreneurial DNA flowing through their bloodstream, right? I figured out at 14 years old that I was an entrepreneur. At the time, I lived in New York, and I lived not too far from Central Park. And on the weekends there, the softball players, they go out and they play softball and they leave bottles and cans on the ground. And so I used to go on the weekends, pick up the bottles and cans and trade them in for a nickel. And that for me sort of made me aware of what people see that others don't. Some people saw bottles and cans and trash. I saw nickels in a way to buy new sneakers. And Walkmans, back then in the Walkmans, your students have no idea what Walkmans are, right?
Yeah.
This up in the 80s. But I realized that I had an entrepreneurial spirit. So from there, the first thing that I decided to do was become a fitness trainer. So I know a lot of your students kind of think about that. Maybe they're in that world now. And so I actually launched my own fitness personal training company when I was 16 years old, working with individuals in Spanish Harlem, which is where I lived. A lot of folks in that community didn't have health education, fitness education, and predominantly they were Hispanic and African American, poor. So no one was teaching them about, hey, how to stay healthy. And I certainly jumped into that because I saw an opportunity, right? An entrepreneur sees a need and fills the need. That's how it works. That's what Nigel talked about. That's what the founder of First Fitness saw. But that got me into the world of fitness, into the world of being able to provide that. And then along the way, I developed other areas of entrepreneurial expressions. But all of them started out with recognizing that personal training was a way to get in the door. And then from there, looked at other ways that I could help people. And the nutrition became a natural part of that.
I love it. And I did not know that story about the cans in Central Park.
Mhm.
If you were to tell my students today, I wish we could all be in person, but what advice would you give? A lot of, yes, my students have this entrepreneurial spirit. They know they want to do something in industry, but how, where do you start? What advice would you give them in trying to find their niche and how to build some security for themselves?
I would say the one thing that's important above all things for any entrepreneur, whether it's in the health industry or any industry right now, that's the service industry, because the health is a service industry, fitness is a service industry, gym ownership, coaching, all of that is a service industry, right? You have to expand and diversify your offerings in order to capture more of the marketplace. The day and age of the one trick pony is over. Think about it. You would never go to a restaurant if all they did was offer French fries. After a while, you say, "What else you got?" Right? And the consumer demand would also force you to expand your menu to attract more people. Because you may have the person who walks into your restaurant and says, "I don't like French fries." Well, what else you got? Nothing. They're going to leave. So if you all you are is focusing on one area of the fitness industry, you're almost setting yourself up for disaster, because if you cannot offer other services that complement the fitness world, then you're going to lose customers and clients to the guy next door who has a broad array of synergistic services. That is having a highway. And when people sometimes say in business, to those that don't understand success in business, they often say, well, I just stick to my lane. Okay, maybe in the 1970s, but we're in the 2020s, and the future says you have to expand to have multiple lanes as long as you stay on the same highway. So if your highway is fitness, health, and nutrition, great. Let's create multiple highways so that you can overlap one lane to the other, create one highway, multiple lanes, so that way you can capture more of the market share, more of what people want, without having to reinvent your identity. By that meaning, if you go to another highway, you present yourself to be something that doesn't align with your initial identity, you will struggle in business. But if you create a nice highway, multiple lanes, and for me, that highway is personal growth and development. I have multiple lanes to that highway, but people get on my highway, they know what they're going to get. And for your students, I would say you have to diversify and plan on doing that early.
So what does your personal highway look like? What are
So
some of the things?
sure. So the radio show is another way for me to deliver value that has components of personal growth and development, which is why you were on, which is why I had Nigel on. Two very different people, two very different topics, but on the highway of personal growth and development, it fit nicely, right?
Mhm.
And then I also do sales training and career coaching, and that's personal growth and professional development. And then I've got my financial services company. Well, that's wealth development and growth in that arena. And then I've got my books, and I've got my radio show, the podcast, and on and on. It's all part of a highway that is synergistically developed to deliver personal growth and professional development in health, finances, and mindset to whoever decides to travel it.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so I'm going to throw both of you a curveball because we chatted a little bit beforehand, but both of you are listening to you just now. I realized the the term branding is really popular, right? Everyone talks about my brand, my brand. And every semester in this particular course, I have a lot of students who are talking about I'm going to build my brand. But when I ask them questions, they don't really have an answer. So, Nigel, I want to flip back to you and ask you, what is your brand? First Fitness, what does that brand stand for? What is your brand?
We are a total wellness solution. And total wellness solution in our world is kind of like Jay is saying, our highway is health and wellness. So within that health and wellness, we have products. We have a financial opportunity. So we have an opportunity for people to start their own health and wellness business and make a career out of it. You have to have personal growth and development. It's who you become in life that determines the amount of success that you have. That's a wellness, think about it. Physical, mental, financial, spiritual, it's all under the umbrella of health. So we have products, that's the health and wellness products. We have the financial opportunity. We have the personal growth. We have a community. When you're thinking about asking someone who's young, what would you recommend for me to do in looking at a business? Number one, have a mentor. Partner up with someone who has traveled the road you're about to travel on. And that's what I'm passionate about doing. I know that that's what Jay is passionate about doing. And then I just think about, in today's world, making an impact, belonging to something, having a vision, having a cause. When Jay's talking about multiple highways, I'm sitting and I'm trying to put myself in your student's shoes. Here's what I think is a good example of what Jay is saying, because we've spoken about this. You're going to have students who might say, I want to become a personal trainer, for example.
All the time.
So I want to become a personal trainer. Well, if I am the client of one of your students, I am paying that student, who's this fitness guru now, fitness expert, as an accountability partner to help transform my physical being and improve my health. Well, what Jay is saying by multiple highways, part of that is going to be your student, the trainer, educating me on eating healthy. And what about taking supplements? That's another part of the highway. So your student who's got the sight set on becoming this personal trainer, fitness expert, is also going to be recommending a nutritional product that helps them also financially. And sometimes the recommendation of the nutritional supplements can yield more money than they are getting per hour training. That's what Jay is talking about as an example. There's many more to that, but I think that's a very layman explanation, if you will. Hey, I'm going to be a fitness trainer. That means I've got to get these people eating healthy. I've got to get them taking some supplements. I happen to be a provider in that lane as well.
And Jay, you're a man with many hats. So what would your brand be? What is your brand?
Now, when people look at me, I want them to know that I'm the world's number one action tainer. Someone who
Wow.
through a method of entertainment forces them, inspires them to take action. Because everything about my approach has a very entertaining approach to it, but it's insightful. It's implementable, so that the person takes action. But it's going to be where if you meet with me, you're not walking out the same. It's impossible to walk out the same if you, first of all, have the honest, authentic interest to change then meeting with me or having an experience with any of the things I do, you will walk out differently than when you first walked in. And I think that's the same thing that happened with Nigel. And by the way, as another layer of I think the point that you're trying to help your students understand is to be successful in whatever they're going to pursue, whether it's, I know there's coaching there's sports coaching, there's all sorts of different avenues that your student wants to pursue. You have to make sure that you leave people a little better off than before you met them.
Yeah.
If you can focus on that, more doors will open than you can handle, more money will come than you can spend and save. If you focus on how can I leave this person better off than before they met me, you will find the answers to that question and you will figure out ways to make that happen.
This so much because we've just come full circle for when Nigel first introduced himself and he was talking about community and like reaching people and being a service to others first, and then it comes back. That was beautiful. Listen, both of you, I'm going to speak for everybody, but I know how busy both of you are. So I appreciate your time so much. Thank you. And if you're willing, I'd love to have you guys come back again and talk to my students. This was amazing. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much for having us on.